What's up, everybody? It's Mushvik here, and today in this video, we're going to be talking about 3 books about trauma you should read instead of The Body Keeps the Score. Oftentimes, when we're thinking about books about trauma, one of the first books that we ever think about is Body Keeps the Score. This is because it's one of the most widely renowned books written by Vander Kolk. Vander Kolk is often seen as the leading expert in trauma. However, I'm here to tell you the book really sucks. It is one of the worst books in my personal opinion, and I'm going to tell you why. When we're looking at The Body Keeps the Score, one of the reasons I don't recommend the book is because it is not rooted in actual science. Vander Kolk does this thing where he takes a lot of research that is there and he really simplifies it and he kind of adds his own conjecture into it, making the book not really based around real science. So when we're looking at modern research around what trauma is like and how trauma works and how people recover from trauma, The Body Keeps the Score is extremely inaccurate. Also, one of the things I really think people should know is that Vander Kolk has been kicked out of his own organization for the mistreatment of women in his organization. So for me personally, morally, I have a huge issue with recommending a book that is written about trauma when the writer himself has gotten into trouble for treating women poorly and acting inappropriately towards women. So for me as a trauma informed therapist, I have a huge issue with that, especially giving a man this type of platform when he has treated women poorly. Another reason why I don't like Body Keeps the Score is because when you read the book, one of the things that you'll notice is the book is asking us to have a lot of empathy towards people that have committed atrocious crimes in wars. For example, we are told to have a lot of empathy towards people that have committed horrible things because of their trauma in wars. But what it leaves out is the extreme amounts of struggle that the victims experienced. And to me, it really decenters marginalized identities in a way that's not okay for me. So today we're going to be talking about books that are much more culturally significant, has a much more culturally nuanced lens into trauma and understanding of experiences of marginalized identities. So one of the first books I wanted to talk about that is What My Bones Know. What My Bones Know is a really cool book because it talks about the experience of recovering from complex trauma from a person that has actually been through it. And the book also just gives you a firsthand understanding of what it's like to live with complex trauma and PTSD and how people can find hope and move past it. What My Bones Know is a riveting book from an actual survivor of trauma and how you can do better too. It's a book that gives you hope at the end of the day because it's not just about the horrific things someone has been through, but the writer really talks about how they were able to get past it. Another book that I would also recommend is going to be My Grandmother's Hands. My Grandmother's Hand is an amazing book that honestly shows the importance of trauma recovery and also looks at generational trauma and how that impacts people. It looks at trauma not only from a lens of the fact that it happens to just white people, but it happens to marginalized identities too, and how racialized trauma healing is. My Grandmother's Hand is a really great book that also talks about community healing. It talks about how we can heal through connection with others too. And I think it's a really great book, especially if you're looking at healing from trauma from a multicultural lens. The book is also much more updated in terms of the modern research that is there for trauma and also asks us to look at trauma from a different lens and look at healing, which is I think is really cool. And also one of the other books that I strongly recommend is The End of Trauma. Even though the writer Bonanno is someone that has done a lot of research around trauma and some of his research is cutting edge and it's some of the newest information. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but one of the things it does is it really debunks some of the things that Vander Kolk will talk about in his book. And also, he really gives us accurate information about healing from trauma. He helps us learn that people are resilient and people tend to move towards healing from trauma and they have a self-actualizing tendency. He shows a lot of the research and also explains it to us in a way that's easy to understand. So these are some of the books about trauma that I would recommend instead of Body Keeps the Score because overall Vander Kolk is not a great person because of his treatment of women and also his book is not really written from a multicultural lens and does not show a lot of cultural competency, not to mention the fact that it's not accurate science. So let me know what you think about some of the books that I talked about if you read it, and hope you have a great day. Bye bye.